Protagonist of debate and master of rhetoric, Plato said that music and rhythm find their way into the secret places of the soul. This is true. I know this is true because I know a man whose heart, whose soul, whose demeanor, and whose life is a Broadway musical of music and rhythm, and the soul that it inhabits is one of beauty. Today, ladies and gentlemen, it is my extreme honor to introduce to you the newest member of the Ohio Speech and Debate Association Coaches Hall of Fame, Mr. John Francis Weaver, who first danced his way into my world over 20 years ago. I met John as a high school student who giggled his way through nearly every practice session I had with him and his duo partner. Little was accomplished during those practice sessions I had, and it was difficult to stay on task with John at times because his joy for life, that music in his soul, got in our way. But something in me knew, even then, that he was special. He was the one. The one for what I didn't know, but I just knew. The lyrics to an ABBA song, and some of you may know it, play in my head when I look back on those early days, maybe because today the always ambitious John is the first high school theater director in the country to secure the rights to produce Mamma Mia on a high school stage. Or maybe it's because I know that I finally figured out that life is really all about taking chances. The lyrics to the song are, take a chance on me, gonna do my very best, and it ain't no lie if you put me to the test, if you let me try. And so I took a chance on John, and I chose him as captain of the 2001 Perry Speech and Debate team, where he served as only John Weaver could, with a joy for life that is contagious and an enthusiasm for every task that was incomparable. Time moved on, however, and it seemed that John's senior year was over before it even started. Little did I know then that shortly after graduation from Perry, John was about to dance his way back into my world and change the trajectory of my life and the lives of many Perry High School students to come. Many that weren't even born yet, but who sit in this theater today because they too, like me, like John, took a chance. Everyone in this room is here today because at some point, you took a chance. I'm here today because, by chance, a bus packed with speech and debate students broke down on a highway in the middle of the night in 2002. And while we waited for help to arrive, students' questions ranged from, can we get something to eat, Mom? No, Danny, broken down buses don't move. To, are we gonna die out here, Mrs. Patron? I don't wanna die. No, Erica, we're fine. We're sitting in a church parking lot right off the highway, honey. God will watch over us. He did. So sitting, fully composed, right across the aisle from me, taking in all the sights and sounds of life, from which he was only 1 year removed, was John Weaver. John had agreed to spend a weekend away from his studies at the University of Toledo to judge at the Cincinnati-Princeton tournament for me that year. And so he too was caught in the chaos of the ride home from hell. To divert our attention from those who were sure that Freddie and Jason was going to make an appearance at any time, I engaged in idle conversation with John when suddenly I had a thought. I knew there was going to be an opening on our very minuscule coaching staff, and I thought, maybe John Weaver would be interested in the job. But the voice inside my head said, but John attends Toledo University and that distance would be a problem. But then the voice said, remember how he filled the room with joy when he was your student? And so I decided to trust my gut and to take a chance, because in the end we only regret the chances we don't take. And I asked him, John, how would you feel about coming back to Perry to coach for us? John was only mildly interested. Said he would think about it. Eventually, the bus was repaired and we arrived home from Cincinnati, Princeton at about 5 a.m. on Sunday morning without uttering another word about the possibility of John returning to Perry to coach. Now, John may dispute this next part of the story, but I swear that before 5 p.m. on the very next day, John Francis Weaver arrived at my classroom door to let me know that he decided to drop out of Toledo, move home, enroll at Kent State University, and he was reporting for duty. I had my new assistant coach. The man with the music and rhythm and secret places of his heart and soul had come home. And since then, ours is a song that has been filled with joy and laughter, grief and sorrow, challenges, successes, and celebrations. And I would not change one thing, not one. We became partners in just about everything, including crime. It's true. It is true. I am not sure whatever possessed John, I'm sure it was his idea, to think it would be cool to lurk the halls of a swanky hotel pretending to be Charlie's Angels. But this is where our training as speech and debate coaches really came in handy. John and I trolled those halls, miming weapons like state champions in duo interpretation while we completed room checks during an overnight tournament. Technically, the event that followed was all John's fault. It's true that I assured him that the door to the room that we were about to knock on belonged to our kids, but he was the one who knocked on that hotel room door. First, though, we positioned ourselves on either side of the door, and we assumed the rules of Charlie's Angels, Kelly and Sabrina. Waiting for our students to answer, as the door slowly opened, we jumped from our hiding places. Air weapons drawn when a man answered the door. He looked frazzled. Something told us, this is not a Perry student. Our kids are not elderly men with very white hair and nasty beards who wore white beaters and scratched their bellies when they answered the door. This man seemed surprised and angry, more angry than surprised. And we were still breathless from our dance up and down the hallways, but we knew we had to act fast, so we quickly turned back in to Kathy and John. And we did our best dramatic interp apology. He didn't like our performance. Before he ever let us finish explaining ourselves, and without uttering one word, the old man shook his head in disgust, and he proceeded to slam the door in our faces. At this point, we should have retreated in shame and embarrassment, never to tell this story again to anyone. But then I took one look at John and that joy that he brings to every experience, and that music in his soul overpowered any feelings of doubt and shame that I had in that moment. Next thing I knew, we were rolling on the floor in fits of laughter right outside that man's door. Truly, John can and always will find the silver lining in any situation, even when there is no silver lining to be found. The music and rhythm that emanates from John is especially prevalent in tab rooms around the state of Ohio. His is a song of calm, a rhythm that keeps tab rooms running at their optimum level. John has become a fixture in tab rooms where there is no problem too small that he won't handle, no problem too big that he can't solve, and he does it with the patience of a saint and the unparalleled kindness that he inherited from his beautiful mother Rosie, who would be so proud to see that John is the very image of the mother that raised him. John is a consummate professional, an honest and genuine colleague, and we have come to rely heavily on his expertise to ensure that we do right by our kids in those tab rooms, because they are and always will be John's, our first priority. You know, our kids have always been at the heart of why John took that chance 17 years ago and returned to Perry to coach. Who wouldn't want to work with the extraordinary humans that sit among us in this theater today, especially our Perry kids? John sees in them what they don't see in themselves. But it's not his job to help them discover what they can't see. It's his passion. In the early years of our journey, it was not unusual for the two of us to leave the building at 1 in the morning. We knew we had to do something to cut down on the long after-school practices that dragged on into the night. There were just too many kids and not enough coaches. So the two of us came up with a brilliant idea. We were going to hire more coaches. But there was a problem. We didn't have any money, and we were too dumb to know yet that all we had to do was ask the Board of Education for more coaches. So we donated a generous portion of our massive coaching stipends, because everyone knows how lucrative coaching, speech, and debate is, said no one ever, to hire former students to come back and help us, and we paid them from our stipends. It didn't occur to John, a college student working at Wendy's and coaching speech and debate to make ends meet, that he might need that money to survive, I don't know. He was and remains the most generous soul that I have ever known. And if you need help, John Weaver is the first person to open his heart and his wallet. Generosity lives in that man's soul, I swear. There's not one bit of John Weaver that I can't praise, except for the farting issue, but I told John I wouldn't talk about that today. So we're not going to talk about it. But sometimes I have found strange ways of expressing my appreciation. I am grateful that John found it in his heart to forgive me after the speech and debate banquet of 2005. Because on that night, I introduced John Weaver to a banquet of around 300 people, including our principal, our superintendent, parents, pillars of the Perry community, by announcing loudly and oh so sincerely that John Weaver is my right-hand man, he's my left-hand man, he's my middle finger. I have no idea why I said that. But today I want to set the record straight. John Weaver is not my middle finger. John Weaver is his own man, all grown up, and the music that comes from his soul gently echoes the words of ABBA. If you need me, let me know, gonna be around. Take a chance on me. I am so grateful that half a lifetime ago, John and I took that chance. I have never laughed as hard, grieved as deeply, had as many meaningful conversations, nor celebrated more joyfully with anyone other than my beloved sons and my husband of nearly 40 years, as I have with John Francis Weaver. He remains a trusted and loyal friend to my surviving son, Matt, and my daughter-in-law, Megan. He is like the third son that I never had, and I love him and all that he stands for. I am sure that today's induction into the Ohio Speech and Debate Coaches Hall of Fame is the pinnacle of John's career. But the truth and the beauty of this song is that John has only just begun to change the world. I am beyond proud of the man he has become and all he has accomplished. In honor of John's influence on my life, I encourage everyone in this theater to take a chance this weekend. And maybe, if you do, you will be blessed to find someone whose soul is filled with the music and rhythm that has the power to sustain you through the best and the worst of times. Someone like my cherished former student, my respected colleague, my dear friend, John Francis Weaver. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in welcoming to the podium the 2019 Hall of Fame inductee, John Weaver.
Speaking of music, wow. Thank you to the coaches of Ohio for presenting me with this great honor. It's a very humbling experience to be recognized by my peers for doing what all of us do. And also, congratulations to Jody. It's thrilling to share this overwhelming experience with you. This is an awkward moment for me, because there's a great deal of pressure to say something profound, but I am no prophet. I have nothing truly profound to say, so take from the next few moments what you will. For as long as I can remember, I've been a talker, and I sought the spotlight at an early age. Home videos recorded on something historians and ancient civilization called VHS tapes reveal my love of performing. My parents bought me a toy microphone for my 3rd birthday, and I used to sing along to Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton's Christmas in America, or a pre-crack Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody. Between numbers, I'd work on my witty banter with the crowd. They were always an amazing audience. My parents knew they needed to help me channel my energy, lest they be saddled with this nightly one-man show playing in their living room for the rest of their days. And so they enrolled me in several classes at our community theater, and my love of the spotlight continued to grow as I did. But suddenly the opportunities to participate in activities that fed my soul diminished. As a result, conversations at parent-teacher conferences evolved into pleas to get this chatty child under control. It was then that my mother decided it was time for me to be introduced to this world of speech and debate. Mom knew about speech and debate because she worked as a study hall monitor at Perry High School and was therefore well acquainted with the program's history of excellence. I must admit that my first experience at a tournament was assaulting to the senses. People screamed at walls, while others, highlighter in hand, frantically glossed over the morning's newspaper. Sharp-tongued youngsters, who I would later come to know as debaters, pushed their way through the chaos with tubs of evidence piled to Jesus. You remember the tubs? It was, to say the least, overwhelming. But once I entered the refuge of a round of competition, I was enthralled by what I saw. People like me who, for 10 uninterrupted minutes, had the spotlight. I knew then that this was something to be a part of, and so I decided then to check the box and say yes to speech and debate 2 years before I even could. It's at this point you've probably labeled me a narcissist or determined I'm the living, breathing stereotype of someone who longed for fame because I didn't get enough hugs as a child. In actuality, I was someone who longed to be heard, not because I craved notoriety or glory, but because I was eager to prove myself to the world, to my peers, to myself. And so my journey with speech and debate began. My first year on the team, I was clueless and overwhelmed, so my routine rambunctiousness was stifled. When I qualified to the state tournament my sophomore year, I had no idea how. I just knew that this tournament that people called littles didn't seem all that little. And the coach from Lake High School, the school that hosted the tournament that year, must be pretty cool because we got flowers with our trophies. Yeah. And then something weird happened. I nearly missed the bus home. Picture the corpulent 15-year-old version of the man standing before you, chasing a school bus down a highway. It happened. And I'd probably still be running down that road had Kathy Patron not turned to then head coach Louis Mattichoni and said, "Is that John Weaver running down the sidewalk in the opposite direction that our bus is heading?" Yeah, I learned a lot that year. The latter years of my stint on the team brought a new head coach, revived enthusiasm, and the confidence of experience. With that wisdom came this overpowering urge to share my insight with the novices, and my attempts to do so were often obnoxiously loud and ridiculously ill-timed. I remember one particular afternoon when Kathy pulled me aside and said, "John, I'm considering you for a leadership position next year, but I have a few concerns." It was the first time that someone other than my parents had done some truth-telling about how I presented myself to the world. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. I sort of left my body and watched this conversation unfold. But looking back on that moment now, I realized I had a choice. I could have interpreted her comments as personal attacks on my character, wallowed in self-pity, and chosen to stick it to the man by asserting my individuality. Or I could see that moment for what it actually was. A teacher who saw me, recognized who I wanted to be, and gave me the constructive feedback on how to accomplish my goals. By the end of the conversation, it was obvious that I needed to make some changes, and I did. And it paid off too. I'd like to think that as speech captain, I was a decent example for our team, but I admittedly felt unnerved. With leadership comes added responsibilities and pressures, and the voice of self-doubt whispered ugly lies in my ear. As a result, I convinced myself to play it safe because safe was safe. By the end of my high school career, it was clear that speech and debate had made me a better speaker and a better man. But I left the program questioning what I had done to make the activity better. Did I do my part? And the question lingered as that chapter of my life came to a close. But then it happened. Kathy Patron's question on a broken down bus in the middle of nowhere. Have you ever considered coaching? And honestly, the answer was no. I never had considered it. It wasn't part of the life plan I outlined for myself when I was 7 years old. My life was never supposed to end up here. This wasn't part of the dream. And for the first time in my life, I leapt off the cliff. I went home that night and completed the paperwork to transfer to Kent State University so I could coach for my alma mater. I didn't play it safe. I didn't just think about possibilities. I just did. And I never looked back. It's amazing how a broken down bus in the middle of nowhere can change the trajectory of your life. And in the blink of an eye, it's nearly 2 decades later, and I can't help but wonder where I would be if I had said no to coaching. I know the picture of my life would be very different, and I'm eternally grateful to those who have guided me along the way. So if you would indulge me for a few moments longer, I must thank several people for their guidance along the way. First, a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Scott Beatty, Superintendent of Perry Local Schools, Mr. Nathan Studds, Assistant Superintendent, and Mr. Dave Riley, Perry High School Principal, for being here. It is not lost on us as a coaching staff how fortunate we are to have the backing of our administration and Board of Education. It's because of your support that we can do what we do. Thank you to the coaches of Ohio. Coaching speech and debate is difficult. It's painful. It's taxing. It's rewarding. It's transformative. It's a way of life. My coach helped me discover my own self-worth, my passions, and my voice. So know that you walk the path of the righteous. You make a difference. To the coaches of Canton and Akron, you have been some of the most influential people in my life. I began my coaching career when I was 18 years old. I was a kid, and you let me make mistakes in your presence without judgment. You helped shape me into the coach, teacher, and man I am today, and for that, I am eternally grateful. You're all nuts, but partially because I made you that way. Ollie, Missy, Nick, and Tom. You were 4 of the best pals and mentors a guy could ask for. Your insights and expertise have broadened my understanding of what it means to be a coach and a leader in this activity. Thank you for your wisdom, but most importantly, thank you for your friendship. Thank you to our kids, our Perry team. You allow your coaches to push you beyond what you thought was possible, and you continue to soar to new heights because of that. On behalf of all of your coaches, thank you for saying yes to speech and debate and for giving us your trust. Kevin, Karen, Mel, Garth, Sean, Paul, and Xavier. The group of you are astounding. You give so much of yourselves to our students without expecting anything in return. And you inspire our kids. To pursue excellence. Not just in competition, but in life. Our kids have learned from you how to be good people who speak well, and it is a blessing to work alongside of you. Kathy and I coached 5 of you when you were kids on the team, and my heart swells with such immense pride as you pay it forward by coaching the next generation. Andy, Jen, Taylor, Matt, and Megan, I'm so grateful to have all of you in my life. Each year, when I disappear from September and reemerge in April, you welcome me with open arms. You have seen me at my worst, and despite my many, many flaws, you accept me just as I am. I don't know what I did in this life to deserve people like you, but I am truly blessed. God has led us to new adventures, and I am so grateful that all of you agreed to come along for the ride. Thank you for taking a day off work to be here. I am humbled by your presence. Oh, I'm doing ugly cries up here. Okay. Kathy Patron, I don't know where to begin. For 20 years, you have been a constant guiding force in my life. You were the first teacher to tell me there was more to me than I saw in myself. You have been there through the darkest days of my life, helping me navigate the turbulent tides of grief. Everything I know about coaching and teaching I accredit to you. I am so honored to have worked with one of the superstars of Ohio speech and debate, but I am even more honored to call you my friend. Thank you for asking that question all those years ago, and thank you for changing my life for the better. And thank you to my family, especially my dad, brother, and my dearly departed mother. Everything I value most in this life, you have given me. Anything that is good in me is because of you. Thank you for your generosity, your patience, your faith in me, and your willingness to share me with my students for the past 17 years. You are the reason I am able to do what I love, so thank you for never asking me to give up my passions despite the sacrifices you have to make because of them. I hope that all of you are as fortunate as I to have a support system that actively encourages you to pursue your passions and discover who you are meant to become. As I said, I am no prophet, I am no poet, I am no philosopher, but I am old enough and wise enough and strong enough to know what I know. Social commentator and poet Philip Appleman captures the very essence of the message I hope you take with you today. Appleman says, whatever we are, whatever we make of ourselves is all we will ever have. And that, in its profound simplicity, is the meaning of life. In the end, speech and debate has been more than an activity that's helped me refine a marketable skill set. It's been a vehicle that has guided me to reach this destination. My message isn't a profound one, but maybe the secret to figuring it all out is simpler than we make it. We must be brave enough to make ourselves into the people we want to be. We must rely on the guidance and support of the people who love us. We must quiet the noise that tells us we're not enough, because we are. Thank you.
Welcome, Downey with the OSDA Coaches Hall of Fame. Congratulations.